Oh, that ball's out. That's live. Back the other way, Sam Hubbard. The Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30, the 20. He will score.
To the end zone, down the field, and it is deflected and gone. Touchdown, A.J. Green.
Over goes back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5 touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up.
Yeah.
It is good.
Corey Dillon, he's gone. The knockout punch, you're looking at it. 65 yards. And they're back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20, touchdown. And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Johnson's got it. Touchdown. Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh, my goodness. What a gear he just found. Case for the touchdown. Wow. Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
Welcome in, everybody. Chatterbox Bengals back here with you today on this fine Tuesday night. Certainly wish we were recapping a win, but either way, we're here to recap week 1. The Bengals played the Patriots on Sunday. We had the postgame for you, and now that we've had over 24 hours to digest it and look into it, I think we're going to have some more sound takes today. Craig, how are you? How do you feel?
I'm good. Look, I don't know if they're going to be more sound or not. I guess you guys can be the judge of that. But look, there's been a lot of reviewing of video, a lot of reviewing of stats, a lot of stuff to look at, and some of it's really eye-opening. Some of it, I think, like you talked about on Off the Bench this morning, is stuff that, quite frankly, they can clean up. Some of it is getting comfortable. Some of it is just fundamental. So we'll break it all down for you. We've got some videos to go through. Plus, we'll dive more into some of the other conversations that have been happening.
Let's not waste any time. Let's just get straight into it. We pulled some clips throughout the day today from film throughout the game, and these were sort of the key plays that we figured out that changed the trajectory of the game for the Bengals. Obviously, no one expected the game to be as close as it was, much less a loss to the Patriots. And these were the few things that we thought really changed things in the game on Sunday. First off here, we see on a very early play in the game, Bengals backed up here. Trent Brown on the right side, Josh Uche rushing for the Patriots, and just knocks him flat down. I mean, there's no competitive nature there from Trent Brown whatsoever. He's on his back feet the entire time, and he's just hitting the chest and knocked down completely. That's ridiculous. That's not what we signed Trent Brown to come here and do at all.
Yeah, Josh Uche, not exactly known for his physicality over the course of his career. Now in his third year in the league, and probably not someone that you've heard a whole lot about. So for him to come in and be able to just completely manhandle like Trent Brown, like you said, completely unacceptable. And look, if we're being honest, the offensive line for the most part performed pretty well.
Yeah.
Orlando Brown Jr. scored a 80.1 on the PFF rankings for the week. I mean, in general, the line had one of its better performances overall. And then there's Trent Brown, and his pass blocking grade on Sunday, 48.8.
Laughable.
PFF, 48.8. It literally laughable. And this is a guy we went out and signed for millions of dollars, because we thought that he was going to be an upgrade. Now, obviously, Amarius Mims potentially waiting in the wings. How long before we see him? I don't know. But what I do know is that Trent Brown's performance, and we have another clip that we'll show here in just a second, just all game long, completely unacceptable. And when you look at the 3 sacks that happened for Joe Burrow over the course of the game, Trent Brown involved in all 3.
That's right. And when you bring in a guy on a 1-year deal to try to help you win a Super Bowl right now, this is not the kind of play you expect from him in week 1. Trent Brown was supposed to be a plug-and-play right tackle in case Amarius Mims was either hurt or not ready to go. It certainly looked like he was ready to go when he was out there during the preseason. Obviously banged up, wasn't active on Sunday. Hopefully the Bengals can get him back soon because, as Craig said, that wasn't the only play from Trent Brown this weekend. Here again, lined up there at the right tackle position, just a simple swipe away of the hands. And number 99 on the Patriots, straight to Joe Burrow, forces a fumble early in the game. And luckily the Bengals were able to recover, but man, that's just not even competitive tackle play, again, from a guy you brought in to be a plug-and-play fix. I mean, that's the slowest kick step I've ever seen. And then a swipe of both hands away, and he's looking at the guy's back as he's in Joe Burrow's lap. That's just a terrible play, and it continues to be that way for Trent Brown. I didn't really think that he was that bad watching the game through, but coming back and watching the film, Craig, I really was worried about Trent Brown, and it just made me even that much more concerned about Amarius Mims' level of health and how crucial it is that he gets back and on the field and in that right tackle slot as soon as possible.
Yeah, look, I don't want to act like this is what we should expect out of Trent Brown moving forward. I think, like you said, this is not what we signed Trent Brown to be.
Right.
But if we're being honest, the concern with Trent Brown coming into the season was twofold. One was his injury history, and 2 was his drive and his just overall motivation to perform.
Exactly.
And what I saw from those 2 clips and in a number of other clips was just complete lack of effort and complete lack of focus on the fundamentals. So you mentioned it. He's back on his heels. He's leaning and reaching. Keon White scored one of the top defensive rushing scores on PFF, but I don't know how much of that was Keon White and how much of that was Trent Brown, if I'm being completely honest. Now, Keon White had a very solid game. As you watch the video, he had a very successful rush against multiple guys. He lined up along the line in multiple positions. But there's zero excuse for a play like that where Trent Brown goes to make contact and Keon White is able to just, with very limited effort, just swipe him away, and for Trent Brown to just fall over like that. I mean, quite embarrassing. Look, I don't think that the Bengals are going to make a rush to judgment here. They'll probably give Trent Brown another game or 2 before they force Amarius Mims back into the lineup, assuming he's healthy. But we talked about this on cut day. The Bengals' depth is not exactly something to behold when you're looking at the offensive line, especially on the outside. So Trent Brown's your answer until Amarius Mims gets healthy. And quite frankly, as good as the O-line performed overall, Joe Burrow pressured the 3rd lowest rate of his entire career, only 6 times on his 35 dropbacks, 17.1%. But Trent Brown was involved in like all 6 of those, and just not a good enough answer. And it makes you wonder, okay, if you plug in a quality right tackle for Trent Brown, what does that game look like? I think it looks a little bit different overall with that offensive line and the lack of pressure.
Yeah, and just building off that, Cordell Volson had one of the best games of his entire career. A 76 pass blocking grade, a 76.7 run blocking grade on 35 pass blocking snaps with 0 pressures allowed. That's not the play we've come to expect from Cordell Volson. He was the question mark on this offensive line, we thought, going into the season. There were consistent questions about whether Matt Lee, the 7th-round stud out of Miami, could play guard. Maybe Amarius Mims bumps in there if Trent Brown's great. Maybe if Amarius Mims lights the world on fire, Trent Brown will play guard. Well, Cordell Volson certainly wasn't the problem on Sunday. He looked great. You already touched on Orlando Brown. We know what we're supposed to be getting out of him, and he continues to deliver. He's a captain on the team now in his second year in Cincinnati, and he continues to be the left tackle we hoped he was when we gave him that big-time contract. We just have to hope the other guys we signed are able to play up to what we expect as well. The Bengals haven't missed much in this window on signing guys and having them play up to their potential. Most of the guys they've signed have greatly outplayed their potential of free agency. DJ Reader, Trey Hendrickson, Von Bell the first go-around. All these guys were basically discarded by the league, and then the Bengals swoop in, sign them to a cheaper second contract, and they light the world on fire. A little bit of a different case with Trent Brown. He's a little older, a little bit more established. It wasn't as much of a flyer on him, but now it's starting to seem like it might have been. I thought Trent Brown was a sure thing coming into the season, and if Mims wasn't ready, I'm very high on Mims, don't get me wrong, but if he wasn't ready, I thought we'd be completely fine with Trent Brown, and that certainly doesn't seem to be the case. I was shocked that he was the main issue on Sunday with the offensive line, and you talked about Joe Burrow being pressured for the third lowest amount of times in his career. The Bengals only threw the ball downfield 3 times, 20 yards downfield 3 times. I have to wonder if part of that is a lack of faith in your right tackle. If the rest of the offense is great, whether that's in Joe Burrow's head or the offensive coordinator's head or Zach Taylor's head or whoever it is, if you can't rely on your right tackle to protect your quarterback, then you're not going to set up long developing downfield throws. We have another play coming up here later in this breakdown where we're going to see that Joe Burrow just flat out missed a developing route downfield. And part of me has to wonder if after obviously not being pressured too much, but all of those pressures for the most part coming from Trent Brown's side, if Burrow just can't get comfortable back there and mentally he just doesn't trust Trent Brown.
Well, look, Trent Brown's performance certainly isn't going to help Joe Burrow feel more comfortable. But regardless of that, Joe Burrow didn't look comfortable to begin with. And there were many plays where he was rushing out of the pocket or getting happy feet or making jump passes when he didn't need to. It just didn't feel like vintage Joe Burrow, whether that had to do with the offensive line or otherwise. I'm not 100% sure. But you're going to see in this upcoming play, Joe Burrow, again, has a developing play downfield. Safety drops off to the side of to the opposite side of the field. He had Andre Yoshivas streaking. He could have hit him one-on-one. And instead, he gets happy feet. Pocket is there. But Joe Burrow instead decides jump pass, dump off to Chase Brown. Not good enough and really affected the outcome of the game. So let's get to that play now. So you're going to see, obviously, in this one, Joe Burrow gets happy feet. You can see the pocket exists. The pocket doesn't collapse on him. You'll watch both on the outside. Both Chase and Andre Yoshivas are both running double moves. You'll see him fake to the outside and then go. Andre Yoshivas, you can see the safety leaning towards the left to go with Jamar Chase to cover the top over on the left, his left-hand side of the field. Andre Yoshivas has an endless field in front of him. And you can see that he's on the way to beating his defensive back in that route. Jamar Chase as well, open down the side. But if you go back, the thing that is interesting to me, I don't think either one of those are actually the immediate read on this. I think the immediate read is actually Trent Irwin, who's in the slot on the left-hand side. He's looking to do a deep crossing route to try and pick up that first down. I think both Yoshivas and Chase are both intended to draw out the safeties and keep them deep so that Irwin can sneak in behind there. But the linebackers drop back a little bit deeper than Joe Burrow expected. Joe Burrow actually said afterwards that they got us playing a coverage I didn't expect on third down. Certainly not my best drive. And I think you see it there. Typically, Joe Burrow, if he's not going to have his primary read, he's going to take a chance and go deep down the field. Instead, what he did on Sunday was hit his checkdowns over and over again.
That's right. And on a play like that, 3rd and 10, backed up, clock ticking down, you're down a score, you have to get beyond the sticks if you don't have the expectation of going for it. And obviously, the Bengals punt that ball away after getting a penalty because Jamar Chase was so mad that he didn't get off the field in time, something I feel like is being brushed under the rug a little bit at the end of that game with all the other things that went wrong for the Bengals. But I think that might be a combination of a lack of trust in the offensive line, and as our good friend Casey McAllister puts in the chat right now, a lack of trust in these second-year receivers. These young receivers, I just don't know if Joe Burrow is thinking in his head when he's dropping back there on the goal line in a must-win situation. Okay, I know Andre Yoshivas is going to beat his guy one-on-one with a double move route. You hope he's thinking that, or you hope he's at least optimistic that his guy is going to get the job done. But I think if T. Higgins is out there, you see a completely different mindset from Joe. And this isn't breaking news or anything. We all know how good T. Higgins is and how much he means to this offense. I just think we saw a little bit on Sunday the lack of readiness of these young receivers. We're really excited about them as wide receiver threes. And I think that's still a great place to be. I think all four of these guys, can be exciting wide receiver threes in the Bengals offense. When they're asked to take that step from 3 to 2, I think that step's bigger than the step from 2 to 1. I think when Jamar Chase is out, you see how the Bengals are still able to succeed with just T. Higgins as the number one dominant receiver in that offense. They barely lose anything, if we're being completely honest, in the passing game. When you lose T. Higgins and you're required to have someone jump up into that number 2 role next to Jamar Chase, when teams already shift almost all of their coverages to Jamar Chase, we saw it right there in that play on a crucial third down. The safety on the other side of the hash, on Jamar Chase's side of the field. Andre Yoshivas had plenty of room on the opposite side, and I think if T. Higgins is in that role, then the pass is probably completed, and we might be having a completely different show today and a completely different show after the postgame on Sunday. So I'm trying to hold my reservations with the Bengals offense until we see them healthy. Obviously now with T. Higgins doubtful and probably out with all reports for week 2, that won't happen again until hopefully prime time against the Commanders in week 3 here in Cincinnati. But I am worried about this makeshift offense with the missing pieces so far.
Well, look, I think that all of that is probably true, right? I mean, outside of Jamar Chase, Andre Yoshivas also got 6 targets. So both of them were targeted equally in the game. Joe Burrow throws 29 passes, only 6 of them go Jamar Chase's way. That feels way low. And whether it's because Jamar Chase was in fact sick or wasn't fully a go because of injury or health or whatever it may have been, all of that is certainly possible. But we saw multiple replays through social media and when I was watching the game back of Jamar Chase winning matchups one-on-one. And Jamar Chase was second in the NFL this weekend with an average of 4.4 yards of separation on his routes. Like, that's not just a couple feet of separation. Most quarterbacks can fit it in much tighter windows than that. Like, Joe Burrow had Jamar Chase on many, many routes and didn't go to him. Obviously, we saw the frustration with the punt and the penalty there. But a few plays before that, Jamar Chase was open on a deep out route. Joe Burrow didn't see him. Jamar Chase is clapping and trying to get Joe Burrow's attention, and it doesn't happen. And so, look, whether it's because Jamar Chase was sitting out and Joe Burrow doesn't have that built-up rapport, I find that really hard to believe for guys that go back in their career the way that they do. But the fact of the matter is that clearly Jamar Chase had an opportunity to take over this game, and it didn't happen. Now, if you look at his route tree for the completions, they were pretty boring route tree, only one route deeper than like 10 yards, which isn't really what you would expect out of Jamar Chase. But nonetheless, he was open on many other routes, and he just wasn't thrown to from Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I agree that I feel like it's hard to point to their connection specifically as one that needs training camp. But I think just in this offense and just NFL offense in general, we even saw it with Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk on primetime football the other night with the 49ers. So Brandon Ayuk obviously sitting out all throughout camp, waiting for his contract extension. Then he has a ball in the back of the end zone that hits both of his hands that he drops. Even the best connections in the entire league, the best receivers, the best quarterbacks, I think you need a certain level of reps together. And even if those aren't physical, I think mental reps certainly help. And Joe Burrow saying he didn't know Jamar Chase was going to play until Sunday morning when the game kicked off at 1, I think he was probably racking his brain trying to figure out, okay, how can I beat the Patriots without Jamar Chase, with these other weapons? Because I think I can just do it with Jamar. We're going to be completely fine. I assume all week Joe Burrow was in his head trying to figure out how he can scheme other guys open, because obviously he's not calling the plays. But if we don't think Joe Burrow has a hand in this offense, I think we're all a little bit naive. He's doing what he thinks he can do best at any given moment. I truly believe that. And I think throughout the week, he was trying to figure out how he was going to win a game with Trenton Irwin, Charlie Jones, and Andre Yoshivas as the wide receiving core. And I know the Bengals lost with Jamar Chase, but I have faith that they would have been fine without him. Maybe that's naive to say, but I think that might have gotten in Joe Burrow's head, and he wasn't ready to necessarily go with the original game plan, the healthy game plan, the Jamar Chase game plan, and that's why we only saw the 6 targets on 6 catches. And the deep balls that Jamar was winning on, I don't know what else to say about that. The Joe Burrow we know is a Joe Burrow that takes risks, a Joe Burrow that moves up in the pocket, takes a hard hit and still gets the ball off, finds his guy, makes the big play when you need it most. Yeah, Sunday was check down. Sunday was what me, a Brock Purdy hater, says about Brock Purdy. You're 21 of 29 or whatever it was for 180 yards. That's just unacceptable. That's taking no risks. That's expecting everyone else to do it for you. When I'm a fan of a team with Joe Burrow at quarterback, I think Joe Burrow is going to win me the game. And I think when the front office paid him a $55 million contract, they thought Joe Burrow is going to go out there and win them the game. And on Sunday, he didn't do that. He put the ball in other people's hands, and whether that was on him or on the coaching staff, you see on the ticker, we're going to get into that in a second. But I think at least to some degree, you have to blame Joe and the inability to push the ball deep when the opportunities did present themselves, because the coaching staff did put some opportunities out there on Sunday that I missed watching the game live. We did the post game, and I was very upset about the coaching staff and the play calling, not taking deep shots, not utilizing their guys. But watching the game back, seeing some clips of the All-22 and everything along those lines, Jamar Chase was getting open downfield. They had a lot of these routes in the game plan, planned and called and executed on the outside. And Joe Burrow, whether he tucked and ran with a clean pocket, whether he checked down a little early to a halfback or whatever it is, it's just rust that I didn't think would be here with a healthy offseason. This is the kind of stuff that I can pin on a strained calf, an appendectomy, an ACL surgery after your rookie year. But with a healthy offseason, with most of your weapons there, I have a hard time justifying a lot of the miscues we saw from Joe and from the rest of the offense, in all honesty, on Sunday.
I have one more thought on Joe Burrow, and then we'll move on. The only other thought I have is that you're facing a team in the New England Patriots with completely new leadership. You have a new head coach who quite frankly, you don't have a whole lot of idea of what they're going to be looking to do. You're facing a new defensive coordinator who, again, outside of some preseason video, which no team decides to really show a whole lot in preseason anyway, you don't have a lot of info on that. So on that play specifically, maybe he's thinking they're going to put a little pressure on him. Maybe he thinks that they're going to take away the 10-yard gain so that he can go deep, or that he can fit it in over and the linebackers will be closer to the line of scrimmage so that he can fit it into Trent Irwin. I don't really know. What I do know is that what I saw to Joe Burrow this weekend was a lack of recognition of defenses. Not only did we see it on that play, but we saw it earlier on a play where Tanner Hudson was crossing shallow on a 3rd and 2, where he easily had a first down, but Joe Burrow waited too long and the pass was deflected and then ultimately dropped by Tanner Hudson. We saw it also on the 4th and 2 screen, the next play, where he audibled to a screen pass to Yoshi, which was never there to begin with. Right. From the audible decision, right off the bat, that play was destined to be doomed. And so ultimately for me, what I saw out of Joe Burrow was a lack of recognition of defenses. Now we're coming up next week in a Kansas City Chiefs team that the Bengals have now played like 5 times in the last 2 years. So there's zero excuses to not recognize Steve Spagnuolo's defenses. Right. So I'm putting this game behind me, but if I'm being honest, I need to see Joe Burrow's defensive recognition take a step forward as we move into next week. Now, with that being said, there were 2 things I thought, and we talked about on Sunday, that really kept this team from winning the game. The first was turnovers. That one was obvious. You have a fumbled punt, and then you have the Tanner Hudson fumble at the goal line. Right. The other one is this.
Missed tackles galore, Craig, and it was the story of the game that there's Dax Hill coming off the end, arm tackling on a play at the end of the game. Ramondre Stevenson getting more and more yards after contact, 118 yards after contact on Sunday. That's an awful lot. There we see Dax Hill missing another tackle off the edge before Logan Wilson tracks him down. I mean, this is just putrid defense, Craig.
Yeah, it really is. You mentioned it. Ramondre Stevenson, 120 rushing yards, 118 of those come after contact. Antonio Gibson, 20 yards after contact. I mean, that is just poor tackling all around. Antonio Gibson, not exactly known to be a power back. Ramondre Stevenson, I can understand. He's a power back. He keeps his feet churning. I get it. He forced 10 missed tackles. That's completely inexcusable. But to then turn around and say Antonio Gibson had 20 yards after contact as well, that tells me that as a defense, you weren't ready to come and play, which is crazy because here's some stats that I thought were interesting. Stevenson, with less than 7 defenders in the box, 11 carries, 30 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. With 7+ defenders in the box, 14 carries, 90 yards, 6.4 yards per carry. So there's a couple things here that talk to me. One is that obviously you're missing tackles. Two is that I don't know if we're doing a good enough job disguising the defense, right? If Ramondre Stevenson, who quite frankly, you look at his run chart, he ran all over the field. But if he's able to come out and he's able with 7 men in the box to go 6.4 yards per carry, that tells me that the Patriots know what's coming and they're either calling a play ahead of time that is stacking up well against that defense, or potentially you're audibling into it and they're being able to read the Bengals defense easily enough that allow him to break those carries. So look, there's no excuse when you know the run is coming to be giving up 6.4 yards per carry. And if you have 7+ defenders in the box, that tells me that you likely expect the run to be coming. And 14 carries for 90 yards is not going to get the job done against the run.
Craig, we're both smart guys. I'm not underselling either of us. But if we sit here before the game and we say the only way the Patriots can win this game is if Ramondre Stevenson goes crazy and they run the ball all the time, I certainly hope the Bengals have someone on their staff that's telling them the same thing. If you came into this game expecting anything other than Ramondre Stevenson to be a bell cow back, try to get 120 yards, and will the Patriots to a win, which is exactly what happened, then I don't know how to help you. If you thought Jacoby Brissett was going to drop back and throw the ball 50 times, I don't know how to help you. It really seems like the Bengals knew what the Patriots' game plan was going to be. They loaded the box. You said it. There's 7 guys in the box a lot of the time there. And it just didn't matter. And that's why at some point, obviously the players take some blame for that. You're an NFL player. You need to tackle. I don't care who your coach is. I don't care what they should or shouldn't be teaching you. You need to be able to tackle. You're getting paid to play football in the NFL. But also at some point, it's going to go back to the coaching staff. Because if every single player on the defense can't tackle, then you might not be tackling enough. You might not be running the right drills. You might be wearing t-shirts and shorts a little too often, running drills, running through pads instead of real people. I think this defense and this team as a whole, honestly, needs to take a look in the mirror and think about what they want to be as a team. Dan Orlovsky said it last night on Monday Night Football Countdown. He said the Bengals are finesse on both sides of the ball. There's nothing tough about them. There's nothing strong about the Bengals. And sadly, he's absolutely right. As a fan of the team, as an old-fashioned football fan, it really makes me sick. This isn't how you win games. I know when you pay a quarterback $55 million, when you are going to pay Jamar Chase whatever we're going to pay Jamar Chase to make him the highest wide receiver in the league, and when you have T. Higgins, who right now is making over $20 million, making him one of the highest paid receivers in the league, you're a pass-first offense, and that's completely fine. But there's pass-first offenses that can still be hard-nosed and tough. The Chiefs pass more than anyone in the league. They're a very tough team in the trenches. They're coached well. They have a good culture. And on Sunday, it really made me question the Bengals' culture for the first time in a while. There's no injuries to pin this on. There's no slow preseason to pin this on. I understand Jamar held out, and that's a distraction, and it is what it is. But if you're a Super Bowl championship caliber team, then you have to be willing to overcome something like that. And the Bengals, whether it was just the Jamar holdout, whether it was something else going on, if it was just too much noise this offseason for them to lock in, then I think we might have some bigger problems. But there really wasn't a player of the starting 22, offense or defense, that I was absolutely thrilled with on Sunday. And that's just a tough place to be.
Yeah, look, I think when we're talking about the Bengals against the run, you have to be pretty disappointed. The pass rush, on the other hand, was pretty successful. Trey Hendrickson, with a 40% win rate against the pass, is pretty damn good. As a matter of fact, he had 6 pressures on the day, which was tied for the most in week 1, right? Logan Wilson had 3 quarterback hits, which was second in the NFL. And yet the Bengals only pick up 1 sack of Jacoby Brissett, and it was Dax Hill on a scramble 1 yard behind the line where Jacoby Brissett slid before Dax Hill even had a chance to tackle him. So you have 1 sack on the day. Jacoby Brissett scrambles all over the field. He's breaking tackles. I mean, it's one thing to win in the trenches and to get pressure, but you got to finish it. And the Bengals didn't finish it both in the run or in the pass yesterday or on Sunday.
You're absolutely right. And like you said, Trey Hendrickson, one of the best games of any edge rusher in the entire NFL, but the Bengals issue comes from opposite him. And I don't want to be the guy to ask the questions no one wants to ask, but I feel like I'll step into that role here. We need to be talking about Sam Hubbard. I know he's the hometown kid. I know he had the fumble return against the Ravens, and it's one of the best memories any of us have with this team. But at the end of the day, he's just flat out not good enough as an edge rusher if you're trying to win a championship. He had 0 pass rush wins on Sunday. 0. And he played the vast majority in the game. I don't have the snap counts in front of me here, but he played far more than any edge rusher not named Trey Hendrickson. I'll tell you that right now. They weren't rotating anyone through, giving them substantial reps, except for Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson on the outside. And Hubbard didn't win at all. I think if he has a future on this defensive line, it's going to be putting on a couple pounds and moving inside, because the Bengals inside had trouble as well. Maybe he can be a pass rush threat from in there. But he certainly doesn't give us enough on the outside right now to continue to justify putting him out there. I understand Myles Murphy's hurt, and he's the guy that a lot of us, me included, have circled as the prince who was promised, if you will, the guy who's going to take that role and take it to the next level, be that dominant rusher opposite of Hendrickson. But even until he gets healthy, while we're biding time, I would like to see Joseph Osai out there more. I think the upside's much, much higher because we know what we're getting out of Hubbard, and quite frankly, it's not a lot.
No. Well, look, Sam Hubbard had a really good year in 2022. I think a lot of people got really high on him. They expected him to be the defensive end, the edge rusher for years to come. And then last year, not a good year. I think people started to see the cracks. People started to understand how to attack him. PFF gave him a 61.9 grade last year as an edge rusher, which sounds bad, right? And then you look at their grade of him from Sunday, 48.7. 48.7 is not going to get the job done. 0% win rate out of him and out of Zach Carter is not going to get the job done. We talked about defensive tackle being an area where we needed to address it. I don't think they were necessarily the problem. I'm not saying that. But the problem is when you've got Trey Hendrickson coming and rushing off the edge, and then Jacoby Brissett can just slip out through the middle of the line because the defensive tackles aren't also putting that same kind of pressure on. It doesn't really matter. The whole unit has to be working together, and they weren't doing that on Sunday.
And this is where we come to where I think is maybe one of the Bengals' biggest issues going into the season, and it really showed itself on Sunday. We're going out of order here a little bit, but we'll figure it out. The roster construction, is a big question for me. It seemed like the Bengals were missing pieces on Sunday that they just flat out didn't have on the roster. I think the Bengals were missing a wide receiver 3. I think it was clear Burrow didn't trust whoever was out there. I think it was clear Zach Taylor in the offensive play calling system didn't trust whoever was out there. I think the running back room, I loved what I saw out of Zach Moss. But if you only trust Chase Brown enough to give him 3 carries, then you should have went out and got a second running back in the offseason. And then at offensive line, obviously, Trent Brown's not the answer, and I'm not going to kill him for that because I thought he would be, and when Mims gets healthy, we might have the fix there. But the defensive line is the one thing where I really don't see any excuses. We sat here on cut day and we said, we're keeping 5 tight ends? That means we're not going to make a single addition on the defensive line? That seems a little bit bizarre. And then the tight end I wanted cut cost us the game by fumbling on the goal line. But that's another story. Not calling for anyone's job at the moment. But the defensive line just simply wasn't good enough. The Patriots ran all over us. The front 7 as a whole, the linebackers, they took a step back last year and they continued to take that step back in week 1. I think the front 7 should have had a bigger addition than just Sheldon Rankins. I think he's going to eventually get his feet wet, get up to speed, and he's going to be a good pass rush threat in the middle of that defense. But I think the Bengals should have went out and got someone to really bolster that. And there's still some options out there. Maybe they will. Maybe we will. I don't know. But I really don't think the Bengals came into this season as prepared as maybe they thought they were. And maybe they'll make changes, but I think that there's some real holes here that aren't just easy fixes, and you can't necessarily just say, it's week 1, we started slow, we'll all get okay. I think there's some holes here that are a little bit bigger than they have been in years past.
Well, and when you have holes in certain areas, they exploit holes in other areas too, right? So the tackling became a huge issue this week. And again, the front seven wasn't winning the battle enough, especially the front four, and it was leaving a lot of one-on-one matchups on the outside with the secondary. And that secondary is not currently built to be great tacklers. Now, I'll give Mike Hilton his credit where he needs it. He deserves a little bit. He's a decent enough tackler. But Dax Hill very clearly did not have a very good game. And he missed several tackles. It just isn't good enough. And when you have the front four that's not winning, again, partially due to holes, it exposes the secondary holes. And it's one thing if you have a secondary who's good in coverage and not great at tackling, if your front seven are doing their jobs. But when the front seven aren't doing their jobs and they're leaving one-on-one matchups and not holding contain, then it leaves you exposed for missed tackles and arm tackles like you saw all day on Sunday.
Exactly. And I think if Dax Hill isn't able to tackle at least a little bit better than what we saw on Sunday, I don't care how good he can cover. I don't know if he can be out there as much as he was. If he can't bring someone down in the open field, I don't know that I can have him out there for 80% of the defensive snaps or whatever it was. He struggled in coverage at the beginning of the game. They were attacking him, and I don't know if they just went away from him, realized they were getting damn near 5 yards a carry, or he picked up his play a little bit. I don't know which of the three it was, but either way, he looked better as the game went on the outside, but the tackling never improved. And if he can't tackle, then we know he can't play safety. Maybe he can play corner without being able to tackle. We see some good corners that are terrible tacklers, and they find a way for themselves, but you have to be an incredible cover guy if you're not going to be able to tackle at the outside corner position. And I think that's the position we're in with Dax right now. I wonder if we're going to see more DJ Turner this week against the Chiefs just strictly because of how deficient Dax seemed in the basic pieces of the game.
Yeah, there's a number of names that, quite frankly, I wouldn't be shocked to see a little bit more of, right? And he's certainly one of them. I mean, I'm biased, right? But are we going to see Jong Meta any next week if the linebacker crew can improve?
They didn't
Obviously,
look good.
We all know that they didn't look great. Logan Wilson, okay, but it just wasn't good enough. And so, look, I don't know. Dejon Anthony looked really good in the preseason, but he looked really good against backups. Jordan Battle is a guy who you have obviously gone to bat for and believe that we should see more. He did not see any time on Sunday. So the question becomes, okay, if your starters aren't getting the job done, at some point you have to hold people accountable. And I'm not saying week one's the time to do that. I don't think that they need to come in and bench Dax Hill. I don't think that they need to make drastic moves. But what I would say is that if it doesn't look better early on in week 2 against Kansas City, you better make some changes or you're going to get boat raced. And I think that's got to be the concern. And the way that Pacheco runs hard, he's going to break tackles. The way that Xavier Worthy was able to get behind the defenders in Baltimore makes me worried. So look, I wouldn't be afraid if I'm Zach Taylor to make changes early in week 2 to try and avoid the same issues that you saw in getting boat raced by Kansas City.
And you talked about the defense, a lot of the guys we want to slide in there, but on offense, it's the same thing for me. I think you have pieces that are a little bit more exciting, a little bit more explosive that we just had in our back pocket on Sunday when we were struggling to find any excitement or any explosiveness. Jermaine Burton ran one route on Sunday, one route. And Trenton Irwin, all due respect to Trenton Irwin, love the guy, great hair, but 22 routes for Trenton Irwin, and you're giving Jermaine Burton one when no one can win on the outside other than Jamar Chase? That just seems ridiculous to me. I understand the concerns about him knowing the playbook, him being at practice, all the different stuff, him awake in meetings, whatever story Twitter or the announcers have put on our plate for Jermaine Burton this offseason, it seems to have died down pretty quickly. There haven't seemed to be many legs on a lot of those stories. He either brushes them off like he did with the Al Michaels comment or the reports out of camp that he's such a great guy and a great teammate go against all the character concerns and everything we heard coming out of college. But he's still not on the field. And we saw him dominate, granted, against second and third string guys in the preseason. And if Andre Yoshivas went out and had 7 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown and Trenton Irwin went buck wild in the slot, then I wouldn't be saying a thing. But these guys didn't look good out there on the field. And we have a guy that did. Against backups, I don't care. change something. I'm not going to be the guy that sits here on the show and says the definition of insanity, but running Trent Irwin and Andre Yoshivas out there and just getting locked up by the Patriots DBs seems pretty insane to me. When you have a guy on the bench that has shown he can win deep, if that's the only route he can run, great, put him in there and have him run 3-9 routes. I don't really care. At some point, you have to do something different. You can't just keep doing the same thing. And I hope we see that happen in week 2. And obviously, we did see Chase Brown out there, and I loved what I saw from Zach Moss. He was one of my number 1 bright spots of the game. I thought he was exactly what we asked him to be in week 1, and hopefully we see more of that. But that version of Zach Moss as the lead back does not work without the explosive change of pace Chase Brown right behind him. The whole point of this backfield, how we were going to replace Joe Mixon, was pound Zach Moss up the middle, hard 1, hard 2, hard 3 yards, always falling forward. And then we'd have Chase Brown on the outside to be the speed back, the change of pace, and really set the defense off. They'd always be playing on their heels. It was a perfect system. 2 different running backs. It couldn't get better than that. And then we give Chase Brown 3 carries. I know we were down. I know it was a weird game, and that obviously is going to affect play calling. But it seemed like we just didn't use the pieces on our roster to the best of our abilities, or even try to. If these guys were out there, if Jermaine Burton went out there and ran 5 routes and he didn't get off the line on any of them, he was getting stuffed, pull him, that's fine. You can't tell me you saw enough in 1 route or that you saw enough out of Andre Yoshivas and Trent Irwin that you're 100% sure Jermaine Burton wouldn't have helped the Bengals win that game. That you saw enough out of Dax Hill and Von Bell that you're not 100% sure a few snaps of Jordan Battle could have helped the Bengals win that game. John Meta, same thing. I know we're paying Jermaine Pratt. I know we're paying Logan Wilson. But why have guys on the roster if you're not going to see if they can help the team win? And these are places where the Bengals were really struggling on Sunday for the entirety of the game. It's not like we were dominating like we expected and then the floor fell out from under us and everything went crazy and the Patriots pulled away and won. We struggled from kickoff to whistle. The first 3 punts of the Bengals offensive season, or the first 3 drives of the Bengals offensive season, were 3 and outs and punts. That's uncompetitive football. Zach Taylor sits up there and says, well, I think we all expected to go out there, start 21-0, and no one's losing more sleep than me. That's great. I love a coach that takes accountability, rooting for the Reds. It gets a little nauseating every now and then. But Zach Taylor, I feel like I can go find that clip last year and the year before as well. At some point, the quotes don't matter. The quotes don't matter. Zach Taylor's great in a press conference, and I think that's what's keeping him around as long as he is. Well, obviously, that we're the Bengals and we don't fire anyone. Not that I'm calling for Zach Taylor's job right now, but if this Bengals roster misses the playoffs without injuries, we're going to point back to a Week 1 loss against the Patriots because the AFC is very, very good. There's a lot of really good teams and a lot of really good quarterbacks. They're going to be fighting for 7 spots in the playoffs. The Bengals, obviously, number 1 on the list is winning the division. Then you don't have to worry about the wild card. And we still have all that in front of us. It's a Week 1 loss. I'm not sitting here chalking the season up as completely lost, but this is a game that when you're sitting there in Week 17, Week 18, as the playoffs are right around the corner, and you're looking at the standings and you're saying, dang, when we win this game, we're going to have to go to Kansas City? That stinks. What if we would have just beaten the Patriots in Week 1? Then Kansas City would be coming here. Or whoever it is, Baltimore. We would win the division if the record was a game better. Whatever the conversation point is at that time, however the season shakes out. Every win and loss matters in the season, and this is a game that even playing extremely poorly, the Bengals had many, many opportunities to win, and they just didn't seize it. And I think we will be kicking ourselves for it later. I just hope we're not kicking ourselves for it from the outside of the playoffs looking in.
Yeah, and that's a good segue into the coaching staff conversation that we want to have. And look, there's a lot of different conversations that can be had, and we can point at a lot of different things. The fact of the matter is that for the last 5 years, the Bengals are 1-10 in the first 2 weeks under Zach Taylor, right? They're 0-5 in their last 5 during that time period, despite being favored in every single one of them and being favored by 7 or more in 3 of them. Right? New England, 8.5. Baltimore last year in week 2, 3.5. Cleveland in week 1, 1.5. Dallas the year before that, 7-point favorites. Pittsburgh the week before that, week 1, 2022, 7-point favorites. All 5 of those are losses despite being favored in each and every one of them. It's not good enough. And for the 3rd straight year, they didn't score a touchdown in the first half of their home opener, right?
The only team to do so.
I mean, it just for a team that's supposed to be built on their offense, that's inexcusable. And what it comes down to for me, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is that there is a complete lack of creativity. You look at Jamar Chase's route tree. He's connected on 6 passes, 5 of which were within 10 yards. He only ran 1 deep route. Of course, the one that he caught for 30 yards or 28 yards, whatever it was. The rest of them, all quick routes, really boring route tree. Zach Moss, 9 carries. I get it. Only 9 carries. Not very exciting. Not a whole lot to look at. But when you look at those 9 carries and 8 of them were to the right side of the line, 8 of them, as a defense, that makes it very easy to defend. In running downs, when you're expecting Zach Moss to get that carry and you're seeing that 8 of his 9 carries are to the right side of the line, I hate to break it to you, but these defensive coordinators are a lot smarter than you give them credit for. They're going to figure that out, right? So those are the things that really frustrated me. We can talk about the lack of performance out of the secondary and their inability to tackle. We can talk about, Sam Hubbard not winning a single pass rush. We can talk about all of these things. But when it comes down to it, they had a chance to win this game, but offensively were just not good enough. And to me, it came down to a lack of creativity and a lack of guts by Zach Taylor a little bit to not go for it there late in the game when he knew that his defense hadn't been able to get a stop and hadn't been able to tackle almost all game long. The Patriots handed you this game. They handed it to you. They come out in the second half. They could have easily pounded the ball down your throat. And what do? They start to try and get cute and throw the ball. In the first drive, they're 3 and out with 3 passes, despite the fact that they ran for whatever it was, 96 yards in the first half. To come out in the second half and just start by throwing 3 passes and basically hand you an opportunity there for you to not capitalize on it is not good enough. And a lot of it comes down to this coaching staff and not being prepared themselves to win the game and to call a game that is capable of coming back. I don't have the stat in front of me. I should have looked this up. How many times have the Bengals really come from behind over the course of Zach Taylor's career? It doesn't feel like they have a whole lot of come from behind wins, whether it's Zach Taylor's inability to get creative in the play calling to get that come from behind win. I don't know. I don't have enough information. It just, as I'm thinking about it today, doesn't feel like the coaching staff has been able to put this team in position time and time again.
AFC Championship. Everyone always brings up the AFC Championship, 21-3. They came back. That's great. That's fine and dandy. Where's the other one? Just a second example. Third example, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's too much to ask. Zach Taylor was brought in from the Rams off Sean McVay's staff as the quarterback's coach because he was this young offensive guru who was going to reinvigorate the Bengals offense. He was perfect for this system. And then we drafted Joe Burrow, obviously already a few years into his tenure. And we said, oh, wow, this is going to be a perfect marriage. A young quarterback's coach, an offensive mind with one of the best prospects we've ever seen in Joe Burrow. It doesn't seem to work until Joe Burrow takes over. The last 2 seasons, the best runs for this offense have been when Zach Taylor says out loud in interviews, yeah, we've given more control to Joe. He's running the offense. He's audible at the line, all that good stuff. And if that's what it takes, fine, that's what it takes. Then I'm starting to wonder what we're employing Zach Taylor for. Because Lou Anarumo runs this defense, and Zach Taylor's supposed to run this offense. And if it's going to be terrible at the start of every season until he's willing to give up the duties to our star quarterback, then I think we have some issues. I mean, the Saints had an abysmal offense last year. They go out and sign Clint Kubiak, and they score 47 points in week 1. I understand that it was against the Patriots, which is probably the worst defense we've maybe ever seen in the NFL, especially with Derek Brown getting hurt early in the game, but it looked like a completely new offense. Derek Carr looked like 5 times the quarterback Joe Burrow was on Sunday. And then if you scroll through next-gen stats on NFL, you'll be very upset with the Bengals' usage of Jamar Chase. Look at a number 1 receiver on any team. I'm not talking about the Cooper Kupps, the Justin Jeffersons, the Garrett Wilsons of the world, the dominant number 1s. I'm talking about average number 1 receivers. Not even number 1 receivers. Go look up Jalen McMillan's route tree for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. He's their number 3 wide receiver, but behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He had more opportunities out of the slot than Jamar Chase. Much more creative routes all over the field. That's insanity to me. If you have Jamar Chase on your team, how are you not operating the offense with the mindset of we are the best when he has the ball in space? Let's get him the ball in space. We've seen the screenshots of those route trees when Jamar has the 180, 200-yard games, and they're incredible because we're moving him everywhere and no one can keep up because he's one of the best in the league. Where's that creativity in the games against the Patriots? Part of me expects to see it against the Chiefs because Zach always steps up in the big-time games. We always play competitive in the big-time games. I couldn't remember the last time that we're healthy and really got blown out. Obviously, the Halloween against the Browns, but there was no Jamar in that game. So I'll stay strong with that take. I can't remember the last time we were healthy and really got manhandled with this Bengals team. He always gets up for the big time games, and he'll scheme well for the Chiefs. I think we're going to be competitive. I'm really interested to see if this goes well against the Chiefs. I'll give the coaching staff a round of applause for a quick turnaround. If it goes poorly, I'm going to be really intrigued to see how the season goes, because I think with the expectations, a healthy preseason, no ability to just point at the injury in the offseason as to why you're starting slow, I think this locker room could start to explode a little bit if the slow start happens without an excuse.
Yeah. Look, I'm not an advocate for getting rid of Zach Taylor. What I am an advocate for is Zach Taylor allowing somebody else to call the play calls. And we're talking about a guy, and again, I'm not going to sit here and bring up a whole lot of old stuff if we don't have to. We've hashed it enough. This is a guy that got fired from UC as the play caller after 2016 because he wasn't good enough in that role after 1 year.
And you know what I think of the UC
Rams
job.
Right. He goes to the Rams. He's only with the Rams for 2 years. So he's 2 years removed from getting fired by UC as their offensive coordinator before he gets the head coaching job at Cincinnati. Now, look, I believe that Zach Taylor has done a tremendous job as the head coach. Obviously, I don't think there's a whole lot of people that can truly say to me that Zach Taylor is not a good head coach. What I can believe and will listen to is that Zach Taylor is not a good play designer and he's not a good play caller. Those things I can buy into, and those things continue to rear their heads over and over and over again. So, with that being said, we've brought it up. We turn the page now to Kansas City. And Kansas City looked incredible against Baltimore. Kansas City, again, expected to be a Super Bowl contender, picked by many to win the Super Bowl. But, like you said, Zach Taylor has shown an ability to get his team up for big games. What are you looking for on Sunday at 4:25 p.m. out of this Bengals team?
I'm not going to put win as the bar. I would like to put win as the bar, and if the Bengals beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, I'm going to be all the way back in. Week 1 won't matter at all. The bar for me is scoring points. I need to see this offense score. I think it's 3 touchdowns, 21, 24 points, something like that. They need to be very competitive and look better. They need to be at 100 miles per hour flying around the field. The star players need to play like star players. Zach Moss, 5 yards a carry. That's fine and dandy. I would love to see an explosive play out of either him or Chase Brown, anyone in the run game. And some more. I don't want to go back to the play calling because we saw plays where they drew up deep balls and Joe didn't take it. So I'll put it on Joe. I want to see Joe take more risks. I want to see Joe throw the ball downfield. And if we don't score as many points as I want us to score to get back in on this offense, I'll try to find another way to get back in on this offense. And I think that could be if Joe Burrow takes a lot of risks. If that stat line's not great, I'm not going to panic right away. It's going to be about how the stat line comes about. If he's taking risks downfield, if he's trying to keep the Bengals in the game, I'm going to be much happier with that than if he goes 80% completion for 200 yards on 30 attempts and no risks, no touchdowns, nothing like that. So I want to see the offense look, quite honestly, completely different. The defense, I don't have a whole lot of expectations for. I never thought we were going to be a top 5, top 10 defense in the NFL this year. The tackling makes me think it's closer to where we were last year at the bottom of the league. We're going to need to be anywhere from the 15 to 22 range for this team to win a Super Bowl. If we're a top 20 defense and the offense is clicking, the Bengals can win a Super Bowl. So I want to see fundamentals improve. I don't need us to shut down the Chiefs. I don't need us to shut down Travis Kelce. I don't think that's a feasible expectation. But I want to see improvements from the guys that are supposed to lead this team. Hubbard needs to win a pass rush set. I think that's a good goal we can set as a show and a chat for Sam Hubbard. Win one single pass rush set. Trey Hendrickson, I would love to see him get home. I know he played great, but just 1 sack. And like you said, on a Dax Hill blitz where Jacoby Brissett basically slid, we need to get home. We need to create a difference in the backfield longer than just pressures. We're actually bringing Patrick Mahomes down, because if you're not getting to Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to beat the Chiefs. I would love to know what the stats are on the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback when he's untouched, because I would imagine that they're very good. He's an incredible quarterback, and if you don't get him off platform, he's going to beat you. And he might still beat you off platform, but it's the only chance you have. So the defense is going to have to step itself up. We know the offense is going to have to score for it to be a competitive game. I know that was a little bit of a long-winded answer, Craig, but did I leave anything out?
No, the biggest things for me are the fundamentals, right? Number one is obviously tackle better than you did in week 1. I think Pacheco is another one of those running backs that if you don't wrap up, he's going to run wild on you. And for me personally, I want to see less than 10 broken tackles, preferably. That would be great.
Sounds great to me.
The second one that I'm going to be looking for is not something that you're going to be able to see on paper, and that's the pre-snap read out of Joe Burrow. I want to know that Joe Burrow can read the defense, can make the correct calls, can audible out of the incorrect calls, and can put this team in a position to win. We've heard it time and time again that Zach Taylor and Dan Pitcher give Joe Burrow in this offense 2 different calls almost every single play, and give Joe Burrow the opportunity at the line to make the decision based on what the defense is showing, which one is going to be the most successful opportunity. And so for me personally, I don't want to see him audibling into plays where guys get tackled behind the line of scrimmage. I want to see Joe Burrow being willing to audible into shot plays, be willing to audible into runs. Every time I see Joe Burrow audible or make changes, it feels like he's audibling into short passes or run plays. I want to see Joe Burrow trust himself, make the pre-snap read, and take a shot. Those are the things that I'm looking for. And again, I just want to see this team come back out and feel motivated.
Exactly.
If you can't get up for this game, then you can't get up for any game.
Right.
And you came out in New England, and I wasn't there. You know, I went to every game for the first 20-something years of my life. I've never missed a home game. There's a different feel watching it on TV versus being there in person and being able to feel how amped up the team and the players are. Can't imagine that they weren't amped up for this, but through the TV, it didn't necessarily feel like they were overly amped up. I want this team to have the energy and the passion to be out there, right?
Yep.
I think that they perform best when they are amped up and ready to go. So that falls partially on Zach Taylor, but more importantly, it falls on these players. And whether they overlooked New England or thought it was going to be an easy win and didn't feel like they had to get up for it, I don't know. But this is a Kansas City team that if you don't get up for it and you don't make sound fundamental plays, they're going to beat you by 40. So right now, I think the line opened at like 7, which seems really low. But at the end of the day, Zach Taylor's done a good job in his history of getting this team ready for big games. Sunday's another opportunity to do that.
You said it right there at the end. I'm putting the onus on the coaching staff to have the team put this in their rearview mirror, move on, and exactly as it says right there, turn the page, get on to the Chiefs, get a win in week 2. If you're 1-1 after playing the Patriots and the Chiefs, there's not going to be anything anyone's saying anymore about this team not being able to compete for a Super Bowl. 1-1 through these 2 games is completely acceptable and what a lot of people expected, so let's get it. Let's get to that schedule. You would love to be 2-0, but obviously that's not a possibility for us anymore. So win the game that's ahead of you, and that's the Chiefs this week. For Chatterbox Bengals, that's going to do it for tonight, and we will be back live Thursday night, 7 p.m. Craig and I back here for you. And instead of recapping that nonsense from last Sunday, we're going to turn the page to some more optimistic thoughts. We're going to preview the Bengals versus the Chiefs, one of the biggest rivalries in the entire NFL. I know I'm excited for it. Craig's excited for it. And you're excited for it too. So come back Thursday night. Make sure you hear what we all have to say on the matter. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, for myself, for Craig. This has been Chatterbox Bengals, and we'll see you guys next time.
Real quick.
Did
I get it?
We're here.
I got it.
We're here.
Don't forget, Chatterbox Reds tonight. Kirby will be live in the 9th inning.
That's right.
I'll be joining him. And then Thursday, like you mentioned, Chatterbox Bengals will be live previewing the Chiefs. We'll see if we have a special guest for that one. And then we'll be live again on Sunday, the entire game, national broadcast, Jim Nance, Tony Romo on the call. So
listen to Craig and I instead of Tony.
The entire game. It's a road game, so there's no excuse for you not to be in that chat watching the game with us. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll get as amped up as the Bengals are. So apologize for that, but
all good. We're still here.
Join us.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.